Thank you very much. I have just come back from Haiti, and I was challenged to the core of my being, and I was still reeling within myself through the pain of Haiti. But today, listening to the stories, personal stories, particularly just before tea, has really made me to be quite cautious and say to myself, careful, Thabo, you're standing on holy ground. So thank you for those that have shared their stories. I will try to be brief, and I will cut some of the notes here, and maybe to facilitate that, I will just read my text and limit what I have to say to the Anglican Church within Southern Africa, and then conclude by giving you an example from Khayelitsha in Cape Town. When responding to HIV and AIDS, the question of stigma has been at the forefront of our minds within the Anglican Church of Southern Africa for some time. Father J.P. Heath from our province will edify us more if I skip some of the things or I over-exaggerate. And many of you will know that my predecessor as Archbishop of Cape Town, Njongonkulu Ntungani, has spoken forcefully on this matter, at least a decade ago. Before the end of the last century, we were realizing that far too often the churches were, quite frankly, at least as much part of the problem as we were part of the solution. Yes, we were committed to caring for the sick, but when it came to stopping the spread of HIV, much of our stance was, I fear, unhelpful, fueling stigma with all its negative consequences. Because of our disapproval of sex outside marriage, and because a small vocal minority have described AIDS as a judgment from God, not surprisingly, many have said that a cleric is the last person to whom they would disclose their status or go for help. Further, churches have fueled society's negative responses to HIV and AIDS. We all know the horror stories, which I won't bother repeating. You've heard from the Bishop earlier today. Therefore, within Southern Africa, the Anglican Church has worked hard to change the way we speak about sex and sexuality and HIV and AIDS. Since 2002, we have had a comprehensive strategy within which major resources have been devoted to educating clergy and lay leadership around all aspects of the virus and to producing age-appropriate and culturally sensitive material for sexual education within the church. Tackling stigma has been a particular goal. And an independent survey conducted in 2006 shows we have been making some degree of progress. People in our churches, by and large, have grasped that the discourse around God's judgment is entirely inaccurate and inappropriate. However, in a minority of places, social judgment is still communicated explicitly or implicitly from our pulpits, and perhaps more frequently from our pews. The message coming across is that people have received their just desert for immoral behavior. Whether sex or drugs, they have only themselves to blame and should be ashamed of themselves. Of course, that is wrong. But let us be honest, it is not easy for the church to get it right, especially when our spiritual teaching does indeed uphold faithfulness within marriage and sexual abstinence outside marriage as ideal. At the same time, we should not appear to preach that only perfection is acceptable, nor that sexual sin is worse than any other. The true gospel, allow me to reflect from a Christian perspective, the true gospel of Jesus Christ addresses the real world of fallible humanity, often falling short on all manner of moral issues, and of a God who, though holy himself and sitting in judgment on all that is evil, is nonetheless a God of compassion, a God of care, and a God of forgiveness. More than this, if you read from James, he is a God that says, mercy triumphs over judgment. This is a message you must communicate effectively. Churches have never had a good track record when it comes to speaking about sex. To address constructively what is largely a sexually transmitted disease has been a challenge, especially when some of our cultures have significant taboos around speaking openly on matters of sex. Teaching clergy and a widening circle of lay leaders remains key in changing attitudes within our congregations and communities. Alongside this, we are finding it is important to develop what we call grassroots leaders who are role models within the wider community and among their peers, particularly among the young people. An additional priority to which we have become conscious, and we are still trying to be deliberate around it, is the involvement and inclusion of those who are HIV positive in leadership around the dioceses and in our churches more generally. Too often in the past, others have acted on behalf of those who are infected or affected by HIV, which has reinforced the message of a second-class citizenry and indirect exclusion. There is still work to be done to ensure and maintain good levels of accurate knowledge around the disease. We are also looking at why some clergy find it harder than others to address these issues. Gender inequality, or rather prevailing inequality, is another target area, and again, one in which churches have long been part of the program. Churches must not be afraid to develop effective collaborative partnership with other bodies so that comprehensive programs can be pursued in changing both attitude and behaviors. So let me end with a story from Khayelitsha, which really is a story of good news, because I don't want to live as if it is all doom and gloom. And it shows that when a church-based support groups, which were set up apart a few years ago, when these were set up, people prefer to go for testing the furthest distance away from where they used to live. And this has since changed. Attitudes have altered in both church and wider society. The main engine of change has been this. Through collaborative working of clinics, NGOs, and others, nearly all women with children under 5 now know their status. And this has proved to be a critical mass within the community, and it has become accepted for the people to be open about their status without stigma. What I'm trying to say is knowledge is fundamental in overcoming stigma and ignorance. Or as Jesus had said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Thank you.